Welcome back. So I'm going to talk about the Vegas Golden Knights today. And yes, you have to wear a shirt underneath this jersey. It's required. Um, so Vegas is an interesting team. This is going into their fourth season, right? We assume we're going to have a season. All signs seem to indicate it's just a matter of when. It's likely going to be later in January, maybe early February, maybe April, May, June. We'll have like a weekend where all 31 teams play table hockey and we get a champion that way. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But Vegas is a team that's got, well, there's a lot of opinions on Vegas. And it's interesting because you get opinions on the team, you get opinions on whether or not they got too much too soon, you get opinions on the fans, which I don't think are fair. And I'm going to say this as somebody who's been to the city of Las Vegas now 4 different times, obviously before the lockdown, and I didn't start going to Las Vegas until, of course, the channel, went through its growth to where I could actually travel and meet with subscribers to the channel. And I've had some very good, intelligent conversations with Vegas fans in Vegas dating back to their first year. So the idea that, well, they're all uninformed and they're all morons that's out there is incorrect. And you can find morons in every fan base. I know I get asked that question, like, which one's the worst fan base? Who do you think's the worst fan base? All of them. Because every fan base has those fans. And it's both. You get the fans that think they know more than everybody else, so you can't have a debate with them. Because basically it's just, here's my opinion, and here's why yours is wrong. Okay, cool. Or you get the ones that don't know hockey, and then you can't talk to them because they don't. Now, when we get into the discussion of whether or not Vegas is a contending team this coming season, you again get into that conversation of how long they've been in the league and whether or not they should be a contender. Here's the thing. They're going into their fourth season. Most hockey teams, most expansion teams by their fourth year are becoming competitive and are starting to at least get into that playoff picture. There have been exceptions, but the Ottawa Senators had 10 wins their first year, and by the time they're entering year 4, things were getting better. And it wouldn't be very long after that. It was a couple more years after that. And we started to see turnaround. And that's despite having misses at the draft table. That's despite not being able to sign a lot of, big names in their time there. So Vegas, did they get off to a better start? Absolutely. They get a Stanley Cup Finals their first year. Does that mean that fans, some of them are spoiled and they expect a Stanley Cup or it's a fail? On some level, yes, but ownership as well. Bill Foley, if this crop of players doesn't win a Stanley Cup in year 4, I don't know how much patience he's going to have. And I think that's the question mark I have with Vegas is, does the owner have the kind of patience that's sometimes required to get a team over the top for a championship? On paper, you can put a team together that should be a Stanley Cup champion, and then you get them out on the ice, and it just falls apart. And we've had that discussion about what Toronto did 20 years ago, the Rangers 20 years ago. Before we had a salary cap, there were teams. St. Louis would go out and spend a bunch of money and put together what looked like a great team, and then in the playoffs, it just wouldn't work out. Before Detroit did win a Stanley Cup, there was plenty of talk about an overpriced, old team over the hill. And so, for Vegas, I would expect nothing less than first in their division this year. I expect them to be very competitive in the playoffs. And again, the pressure is Stanley Cup or nothing. The fact that this team in their first 3 years went to a Stanley Cup final, and then in year 3, they go to the conference finals, and yet we're still talking about them like, well, that was kind of disappointing for them, wasn't it? It shows how the bar is insanely high for this team, and the pressure is intense. They don't have cap space, so we don't need to get into cap space and whether or not they can bring anybody in, because they don't have it. And between now and opening night, you have to think that they'll get creative. Kelly McCrimmon will make moves that need to be made in order to get them under the salary cap and keep them there, and maybe allow a little bit of space so they can add somebody later. But this is basically what the team's going to be going forward. And it is an impressive team. I do wonder about the depth down the middle, going to be honest. The wings are pretty strong. You got Pacioretty, Marcia So. Carrier is seen as likely being third line. Raw, then on the fourth line. But don't rule out Dylan Sakura. I like Dylan Sakura. I think that he could be a regular in the NHL. He's never going to be a big scorer, but he could have third line potential. And Quinney as well in that depth chart. On the right side, you've got Stone, Smith, Tuck, Reeves, 1, 2, 3, 4. One of the best right wings in the NHL. I could power rank the right wing. No, we're not going to do that. Don't. And then you've got Patrick Brown, and you've got Yurcho there as well. Yurcho can come in as a fill-in if need be, that kind of thing, right? Down the middle, this is where I have some question marks. And I know. My question is who scores the goals down the middle? So you've got Carlson, who is, he's got a 40-goal season in his resume, but he's not a 40-goal scorer. You've got Chandler Stevenson. I know he played well with Vegas, but I still think he's more suited to being a third-line center. So a lot of it comes down to Cody Glass. Cody Glass has made a point to say, look, I've added some pounds, I've added some strength, and I think we're going to be fine. I think I'm going to play well. And he believes in himself. And that's good, because he was pushed off the puck pretty easily in his first go-around with the National Hockey League. So he definitely needs that strength. Now, if Glass becomes that second-line center between Marchessault and Smith, it can kind of get Marchessault and Smith out of, I don't know, they get into this funk at times. It feels like more Marchessault than Smith. And so if they can get them out of this sort of funk they got into at points last season, if Glass can do that, that's great for them. That's something they need. And then you've got Nosek as the number 4 center. No argument with that. Although Krebs is going to, I think, in training camp, make this more interesting. Maybe Peyton Krebs pushes his way into the lineup. Let's say he ends up on the wing, pushes Carrier down, and then Nicholas Roy becomes the 13th forward. Or he alternates with Ryan Reeves, who plays. Vegas has, from day one, always tried to make sure they've got guys who can play multiple positions, who can play on multiple lines, guys who buy into the team first aspect of things. And clearly character matters when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights. And I know people are going to say, what about Reeves? Reeves has been a decent guy for them. And I honestly think that he's been useful. And so when there was talk of, well, maybe they're going to get rid of Reeves. Well, is Reeves useful? He is. He is important to that bottom six. And he definitely knocks the opposition off their game. And then you've also got O'Regan here, may end up being a fill-in at some point. So their forward group is good. I don't know that it's a spectacular forward group. I don't know that I look at that forward group and say, yeah, they're going to win it. Now, I love Stone, Smith, Tuck, and Reeves on the right side. I think that's fantastic. The left is pretty solid. The center makes me a little bit nervous. I do think they should be able to win their division, whether it's a Pacific or it's a Western division, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. And then on the blue line, you've got McNabb, you've got Pietrangelo, Martinez, and Theodore. And I want to credit Kelly McCrimmon for this. You add Martinez from the Kings, you add Pietrangelo from the Blues, and you immediately make your top four arguably one of the best top fours in the league. And so, and again, that's arguably because we're not quite sure how Pietrangelo is going to fit. Is he going to pick up where he left off in St. Louis? Are we going to see a career high in points from him when we get to an 82-game schedule? Maybe, right? And then you've got Holden, you've got Whitecloud. Whitecloud has developed nicely. A team not known for necessarily having a lot of good young kids that they haven't traded away. Hello Brandstrom, hello Suzuki. But Whitecloud's developed. Then you've got Dahlstrom, who they added. Coughlin. And then listed as left shooting defenseman, you've got Haig, Schultz, Bischoff. There's depth here, and I think Nick Haig has the potential to maybe be a top 6 defenseman for them. We'll see. But Nick Holden's definitely earned the right to keep that spot, and Zach Whitecloud didn't look out of place when he played either. It's a good blue line. And I think what Pietrangelo adds, they're going to miss Nate Schmidt, but I do see Pietrangelo as being an upgrade over Nate Schmidt. And then in net, of course, you have the great debate. If you believe it's a great debate. I don't think it is. I think that Robin Lehner is the de facto starter. I think that you look at Lehner's numbers over the last 2 or 3 years, and he's been excellent. He's been a very good goaltender. And there's an inspirational story with Lehner. And again, he had his issues, it felt like, with Buffalo, Islanders, with Chicago, with management. And it always felt like the argument was he thought he was worth a certain amount of money over a certain term, and he couldn't find a general manager that agreed with him. And he gets to Las Vegas, and they agree with him. They say, yep, we agree, and he signs an extension in Vegas. He is the starter. Marc-Andre Fleury's the backup, and at this stage in his career, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think this is something that can add years to his career. You look at Ryan Miller, what he was able to do in Anaheim. If he had still been counted on to be a starter, if he'd stayed in Vancouver, I think he probably retires a year before the one we just finished. So I think this could extend Fleury's career. Yeah, it's a high cap hit. I get it. It's a high cap hit. Their goaltending's really expensive. They don't have cap space. But Fleury's contract isn't really all that tradable to start with. And especially if, as rumor had it, Vegas was not willing to retain any of it. If Vegas was trading him, they wanted to get rid of him and the cap hit. And so when that didn't happen, it looks like he's still going to be their goaltender. That could change. We could see a scenario during the season where somebody gets hurt, a team has cap space, and calls up and Fleury ends up somewhere else. But I don't see that necessarily happening. Dansk is still there as the number 3 goaltender. But let's be realistic. If Fleury were to leave town, if they did actually make a change in net, Dansk isn't going to be the starter. They'll bring somebody else in. And Patera is listed as being loaned out overseas. Patera's 21 years of age, may very well end up being the next goaltender to come in. And it's interesting because Dylan Ferguson I could have put on the board too, but Ferguson played a lot in the East Coast League last year. I don't think he's necessarily ready for NHL time. But we got to keep an eye on him because he did come in briefly during that first season when all of their goaltenders were getting hurt, and he had that brief appearance. So you keep an eye on Ferguson, but I didn't put him on the depth chart in the top 4. It's going to be a very interesting make-or-break year for Vegas. I think it's going to be very telling if Vegas gets off to a slow start, if Vegas struggles, if they're not able to get enough goals, if there's some kind of drama that happens with their goaltenders. Things could get really interesting quickly. But I was going to say interesting fast, but I thought, nah, I'll say quickly instead. So you get both, right? But I still see them as being a contender, but I understand why everybody's picking Colorado right now to come out of the West. I think Colorado's got a deeper roster overall. But I do think Las Vegas is still going to be in that conversation. I think the Golden Knights will be wearing these jerseys aplenty. I would not be surprised if these actually became their full-time home jerseys, to be honest. Because while I know some see them as an eyesore, I look at this and I go, that's the most Vegas jersey that ever Vegased. Vegas, if it's a verb, it's this jersey. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below as always. And hey, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video so you can see other video goodness as we continue on through this off season that still doesn't apparently have an end. Thank you guys for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.